Welcome back. We are talking about some critical relationships between variables across countries and between variables in each country over time that we need to understand to be able to do valuation across countries. And the good news about this is these conditions also reflect a lot of dynamic across countries. Okay, so the first one was purchasing power parity. And it said that all changes expected in inflation have to be incorporated in changes in expected spot rates or exchange rates, because otherwise you would have opportunities to make money and trade. And that's what the equilibrium process is. Buy low, sell high. So let's talk about a second one, which actually is one of my favorites because it was created by a person called Irving Fisher, who has had a profound impact on finance. And personally, I find him just fascinating to read. So investors are expected to be rational. And the notion there is that, remember, I always say that you should look at stuff after tax rather than before tax, because that's the way to think about value. Tax is something that's paid to the third party, who is us as a collector, right? But it's also important to always think of things in real terms and not be subject to money illusion. So the idea being, suppose that my salary increases by 30%, but all inflation increases by 30%. It really doesn't mean much, right? So don't focus on your nominal salary. It should be or nominal return or whatever. Therefore, investors tend to shift their money to countries because you know that normal interest rates are just nominal, and what really you want is the real return. If there are any real return differences across countries, keeping risk the same, obviously, what will happen? The money will flow till the two become the same. So this notion says that rational people will want the real returns on the same type of risk thing to be the same. And remember, the nominal return was RFC or RUS, and the real rates were IFC, IUS. In each country, the nominal interest rates compensates you for both real interest rates and expected inflation. In fact, a lot of my work during my thesis days had to do with equations like this. So you can write this, 1 plus RFC, and remember you're talking about how much will a dollar become after 1 year, can be broken up into two parts, 1 plus IFC plus 1 plus pi FC. This has got to be true. And the reason for 1 plus is because you're carrying money forward and there is compounding effect between the two. So don't add inflation to real returns. It's not additive. Similarly, 1 plus R US will be equal to 1 plus I US 1 plus pi US. Just to remind you, which of these variables are we talking about will equilibrate, will become similar. Because we are not interested in the inflation parts, these two will converge. That's what money will flow till the real rates of return post-inflation are the same in two countries. That's how money will flow. And this will happen all the time, right? So that you get real rates of return. Especially if the two instruments you're talking about are risk-free rates. I want you to understand upfront that the markets are so beautiful, they give you RUS and RFC, say government bond returns. The beauty in that is hidden in each return are two components, both about the future. Isn't that cool? Both pi and I are about the future. And that's the fascinating part about finance, is that it tells you collective opinion about what's going to happen in the future, or expected to happen, not going to. Fisher effect therefore means that if this real returns are becoming equal, then 1 plus RFC over 1 plus RUS, if the I parts are going to be equal, right, what has to be true? Then this, if you go back, and I'm going to make you do the doctor's thing a little bit. Remember, if the I parts are equal, then there has to be a relationship between the other two parts. And that's all I'm reflecting in the next page. 1 plus RFC over 1 plus r US has to be 1 plus pi FC over 1 plus pi US. And this I don't even need to give you an example. I've done some research, as it has many colleagues of mine, that you can actually regress or run a regression, of an interest rate on inflation. And the coefficient is almost 1 always. And what that says is that actually it is true that the main reason that exchange rates change, especially in the short run, 1 year or so on, is due to changes in inflation rates. So this is what the job of the market is. So two parity conditions, R, PPP, and the second one was which one? Fisher. Both have to do primarily with inflation. So the first one said the following, right? That the expected change, say in one period, percentage change, has to be equal to 1 plus pi FC over 1 plus pi US, i.e. exchange rate's job is to kind of correct for inflation or compensate for inflation, because if they don't, there's a lot of money-making opportunity. Fisher effect says, look, 1 plus pi FC over 1 plus pi US has to be reflected, that relative difference, in the interest rates. And I want to again emphasize that before we jump ahead and see what's going on, I want to emphasize first, you should think through not only what independent conditions are, but what do you do when you put them together. If you put them together, you get a third equation. And this equation is called uncovered interest rate parity. And there are two ways of getting there, but I'm first taking you through what I call the inflation, the product market. So what does this mean? That any change in spot rates that you expect to happen should be reflected in today's interest rates looking forward. But what kind of interest rates? Government bonds. Because the one thing about risk-free bonds is they're risk-free because you expect to get paid 100%, maybe wrongly so, in the two separate countries. The nice thing about this is not traded. There is no such thing as a traded inflation rate, though there are different kind of ways you can get there. But the beauty is you want to get to this number, right? At least in the centralized method of valuation, you want future spot rates expected by the market. You now have one hint. You can use market data to get there. So I would like to leave you with that thought for a second. And when we come back, I'm going to do the same thing, not through the inflation markets or product markets. I will do it through financial markets. And that to me is fascinating because it will give you an opportunity to do some exercises with me. See you in a couple.